We would like to welcome you to the Phillips Brooks House Association's 2017 Robert Coles Call to Service Lecture and Award. This annual lecture and award brings a prominent leader in public service to campus each fall and to inform Harvard and wider communities about important social issues and inspire deep engagement and social justice.
Hello, my name is Maria Dominguez-Gray, and I am proud to serve as PBHA's Class of 1955 Executive Director.
So it's wonderful to see such a great crowd for this year's event, honoring the deserving Nihad Awad. I wanted to extend a warm welcome to my fellow students and to Harvard faculty and staff. I'm going to adjust this microphone because that wasn't quite working for me. We are delighted to have in the audience the many student organizations who are serving as campus sponsors for tonight's event, and were campus sponsors of the Youth Forum of Harvard, Boston, and Cambridge leaders held earlier today. Thank you to the Council on American-Islamic Relations, CAIR, and to the other wonderful organizations listed in your programs for co-sponsoring this event, to the Science Center for hosting us, and to our many partners and supporters who are joining us tonight. Your continued belief in our programs and student volunteers is what makes our impact possible. Finally, I want to extend a special welcome back to alumni. This event is kicking off. Oh, yeah, do we want to? Yeah, alumni, y'all are great. So this event is kicking off the Phillips Brooks House Association's Alumni Weekend, which is dedicated to the theme, The Call of Service, A Collective Response. The week will culminate in the honoring of and celebration of PBHA's long-standing directors of programs, Robert Bridgman and David Dance, as they enter retirement. Robert and David, could you stand for a moment? David.
Before we get started with presenting tonight's award, it's also appropriate and my great pleasure to recognize the man and civil rights hero for whom this award is named, Dr. Robert Coles. Dr. Coles has been a volunteer, champion, guide, board member, advisor, teacher, and counselor with the Phillips Brooks House Association. As a civil rights activist, Dr. Coles was deeply immersed in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, marched with Dr. King, and worked for Robert Kennedy. In 1960, Dr. Coles offered counseling support to a 6-year-old girl named Ruby Bridges, who, facing insufferable hatred and stress, was the first black child to attend an all-white school in the South. Dr. Coles' teachings and writings remind us of the importance of genuinely listening to and learning from one another's stories, of the power of reciprocal relationships and service, and of the value of reflection in understanding one another's struggles and our own assumptions. They also remind us of the shared responsibility we have to address the injustices in our communities, whether they affect us directly or not. It is those values that serve as the foundation for the Coles Call of Service Lecture and Award, and in that spirit, we are honoring Nihad Awad tonight. We are honored that Dr. Coles joined us earlier tonight with his family, and we are so glad that he continues to be an important part of this legacy. At this time, we're also thrilled to have two special guests who are going to join us tonight in recognizing our 2017 lecturer and awardee. First, we are honored to welcome John Robbins, the Executive Director of CAIR, Massachusetts, who will share a few words about the work of this important organization.
This microphone, man. We are also grateful that we are joined by Yusufi Vali, who is the Executive Director of the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center, ISBCC, a mosque and community center that serves 1,500 worshippers of 64 different ethnicities and is the largest Islamic institution in New England. PBHA's programming chair, Anwar Omish, will join Mr. Vali in introducing our honoree tonight. Please first welcome John Robbins, the Executive Director of CAIR, Massachusetts, to the stage.
CAIR was born out of a vision to see Muslim Americans on an equal footing with so much of the rest of society that has for years struggled to gain equal access to a whole host of things, whether it be education, whether it be simple basic civil rights, whether it be equality within transportation and travel, or even equality within the media space. Nihad Awad brought to bear this mission over 20 years ago and this vision for his wider society and for the American fabric, that Muslim Americans could join that fabric as equal participants, as those who would be positioned squarely within that American framework, not as outsiders, not as those who came from another land far away, but as a distinct and necessary part of what makes this country whole and unified and strong. Since then, CAIR has grown widely. It's spread across the country. We now have 35 chapters, of which Massachusetts is one of the newest. And when I joined the organization, I did so because I shared that vision, that we could work locally with partners, whether they be interfaith gatherings, whether they be houses of worship across the spectrum, whether they be universities, whether they be other nonprofits, in order to enrich these societies by enjoining and encouraging Muslim participation therein, and enrich Muslim participants within that fabric as well. CAIR is the leading organization for social justice and civil rights within the U.S. because it has adhered to this vision with uncompromising ethics and principles, refusing to sacrifice the good for political expediency, and refusing to compromise on the core values that Muslim Americans need and must be decidedly at the within that very American framework. There is no other way forward, according to myself and so many of us at CAIR, that does not include strong minority participation at all levels of American society, at all levels of American government, at all levels of American nonprofit, educational, and civic life. It is my honor and my pride to work with CAIR and to continue the local work of this organization, not just on a national level, not just on a federal level, but within the grassroots of each individual state in which we operate, especially here in Massachusetts. We have a tremendous opportunity here within this state, and it's been my privilege to work for the last 2.5 years since our chapter started with the great people of this Commonwealth. We've been incredibly welcomed. We've been met with open arms by so many. When we called for a rally in Copley Square this past February, 25,000 people came out, and it is my pleasure to say that we had more yarmulkes there than hijabs. It was my joy to see so many people within a short period of time come out and say, we accept, we embrace, we welcome, and we refuse to live without our Muslim brothers and sisters, regardless of our faith backgrounds. It is my honor and joy to be a part of an organization which has been one of the leaders in translating this vision into a reality. And although that work is not done and will probably continue for as long as we can see, we are proud to be parts of that. We are proud to be its hands. We are proud to be its legs. We are proud to be its tongues in executing this vision and translating it into reality. It's my honor and pleasure here to join you tonight with Nihad Awad, who is one of the great visionaries of our time for the Muslim community. And I certainly hope that you will join me this evening in listening to his words and listening to that impact, and I hope in sharing that vision. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and assalamu alaikum for those of us who are Muslim. Peace be upon all of you. My name is Anwar Omish. I'm the programming chair for the Phillips Brooks House Association, as well as the director of external relations for the Harvard-Islamic Society. It's my pleasure to be joined by Yusufi, who's an exceptional leader here in Boston. He's an organizer, he's a bridge builder, and he's a voice for justice and understanding. It's also my pleasure and my honor to help introduce Nihad Awad, who to me has not only been a ubiquitous presence in a very tumultuous and often upsetting and terrifying post-9/11 and Trump era, but has also been an inspiration for me as I engage in the work of working with communities, of working with Muslim communities. I remember one of my earliest memories is having a CAIR magnet on the refrigerator in my house, and I don't even remember what it said, but what it was a guide to being politically engaged, and it was giving you all these different phone numbers of people you could talk to, and that's sort of been the ethos that has led my political engagement since then. And so I'm very excited and honored to be here. Nihad Awad is the National Executive Director and co-founder of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, also known as CAIR, which is the largest and most prominent civil liberties and advocacy organization serving Muslim communities in the United States. As a national leader in the civil rights movement, Mr. Awad has led multiple campaigns to defend the rights of Muslims and to help Americans of other faiths better understand Islam.
Thank you, Anwar. He has testified before both houses of the U.S. Congress on matters involving Muslims in America. In 1997, he served on the White House Civil Rights Advisory Panel to the Commission on Aviation Safety and Security. In 2004, he was named one of National Journal's more than 100 most influential people in the U.S. whose ideas will help shape the debate over public policy issues for the next decade. In 2012, he was named by a Georgetown University publication as one of the 500 most influential Muslims in the world. In 2010, Arabian Business ranked him as 39th in the Arabian Business Power 100 list, its annual listing of the most influential Arabs. My goodness, he's been on a lot of lists. Recently, in 2015, Los Angeles Times listed Nihad as one of the new civil rights leaders, emerging voices in the 21st century. Beyond the accolades and the listings, I really had the distinct pleasure to sit down with Brother Nihad today, just earlier today, and I got to know him. And I will just say that his story is a profound story. His story as a Palestinian story, growing up in refugee camps, is a profound story, and a story that really has inspired his own commitment to justice for all people. I also want to just share that I was deeply moved by his continued commitment to this work and to CAIR's work, in spite of the attacks over the years by a number of extreme forces that frankly attacked the mosque in Roxbury here in Boston, those same kind of forces. And I just pray that while it took our greater Boston community some time to embrace our mosque, I pray that it does not take the same amount of time to embrace CAIR National and CAIR Massachusetts here in greater Boston, because I strongly believe with Nihad and his background. He's married to, he has in-laws who are Christian. His own brother in Lebanon is married to a Christian woman. And John also comes from a Christian family. That I pray that we will embrace CAIR fully, CAIR Massachusetts fully, so that it only adds to the beautiful interfaith tapestry of Boston.
Thank you, Yusufi. At this time, I would like to invite the Assistant Dean of Harvard College for Public Service and the previous Executive Director of PBHA, Gene Corbin, to join us in presenting the Phillips Brooks House Association's 2017 Robert Coles Call of Service Award.
Don't go away. So it's my deep honor to introduce the presentation of this award. As you have heard, the Robert Coles Call of Service Award and Lecture was established in 2007. This event honors a leader in social justice who embodies the courageous spirit and thoughtful approach to making a difference embodied in Dr. Robert Coles' life and teachings and the Phillips Brooks House Association's mission. We can think of no one more deserving of this award than Nihad Awad in recognition of his life's work advocating for the civil rights of Muslims, social change, and increased dialogue. At a time when we seem to be increasingly losing our ability to listen respectfully to one another, to negotiate difference, this event and recognition of our honoree is perhaps more important than ever. Mr. Awad, we thank you for your determination, leadership, and call for us to recognize injustice and to act with hope and courage. We invite you to come forward to receive your award.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. I want to thank the Phillips Brooks House Association for your generosity. I'm deeply humbled to be included among the people you have honored with the Robert Calls to Service. I want to thank and recognize Dr. Robert Calls for his tremendous dedication, vision, and service to our country. It is a great honor to be with you, sir, here tonight. I also want to acknowledge as well the association's dedicated members and their service to the community. With its 1,500 undergraduate students participating in over 75 student-led programs, you benefit and touch the lives of over 10,000 Boston area residents every year. That is a true answer to any call of service. I was moved to learn one of the association's newest programs includes the Harvard Ridge Muslim Youth Program, a mentoring program for Muslim high school students in partnering with the Harvard-Islamic Society. I also would like to thank Maria, Jalem, your team, and to Anwar, special thanks. I would like to thank Jean, John, Yusufi, and all of you for sharing your precious evening with me this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply honored and humbled to be here with you this evening to receive this prestigious award that is being bestowed upon me by your organization in recognition of the work that I have been doing throughout my adult life. I would not have been here this evening to be recognized if it was not for my parents, who raised me and taught me to be a man of principle, caring about others. Dreaming beyond the boundaries of the refugee camp in Amman, Jordan, in which they settled after being driven out by their home in Palestine by force in 1948, and where I was born and raised, among tens of thousands of refugee families, with no electricity, no running water, no sewage, no paved roads, no infrastructure. I don't know whether you can imagine how life was there. I lived there for 18 years in a primitive living conditions, in a cement block, 2-bedroom. Did you hear me saying bedroom? Actually, I meant to say 2 rooms without beds. Just handmade mattresses with a small kitchen. We were 12 people, 10 children, and our 2 parents. Our schools were canvas tents. Each tent accommodated 50 students with no heat in the winter, just our oversized hand-me-down clothes that we took from our older brothers, and no air conditioning in the summer heat. To be honest with you, I was not a big fan of going to school. My wife, who's American and who's here with me tonight, could never understood why I don't like to go camping with her. I spent enough time in tents. I did my share of time. In fact, I have tent PTSD. I'm not joking. When I see tents, I feel anxious. I would like to dedicate this prestigious award, first of all, to my parents. And to the refugees, to my wife, without her love and support, I could not be here tonight. To my children, who as a father, I look up to them. A father looks up to his children because they impressed me with their maturity and service to others. To my colleagues at work at CAIR, I could not find a better team than them. To all these people, to the refugee children, young men and women in my refugee camp, to inspire them and to give them hope, I dedicate this award. And I promise them to be their ambassador and to be their voice here and elsewhere. I dedicate this award to my detractors. They keep reminding me to take the moral high road and not to sink to their level. I could not have done it without you. You kept reminding me of who I am. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy to lose your home, your land, to be dispossessed of your property, to be expelled from your house, and to start from zero. And to add insult to injury, to be blamed for it. It is not easy to grow up in no man's land, surrounded by despair, with no jobs, no opportunity, and no future. Despite all of that, I decided to use my personal experience with injustice and become an advocate for justice, not only for myself or for my people, but for all people, including the people who wronged me and wronged my people. Because I discovered that when I forgive, and I really mean it, that when I forgive and I serve others, I free myself. I define myself. It is truly liberating. I don't let my circumstances determine my values. But this has been a long process, a long journey. So, what led me to be here today? I was minding my own business, hoping to be an engineer, when I came to the US many years ago and enrolled at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. Yeah. I discovered a small, diverse community of immigrants from smattering countries in America. That was my first encounter with African Americans in that small community. And I also met Native Americans who were Muslim, who embraced the religion I followed, Islam. The reason I'm mentioning these people, these friends of mine from long ago, is that meeting them made me realize that these ethnic groups, Native Americans and African Americans, have been brutally stereotyped. Let me explain. Just in the last few years, before I left the refugee camp, we got electricity in the camp for the first time. 4 years before I left the refugee camp, my family got a TV set. So you can imagine, we started to watch American TV shows, Hollywood films, of course with subtitles in Arabic, depicting Native Americans and African Americans. Shows like Gunsmoke, Hawaii 5-0, Kojak, for the older generation. African Americans and Native Americans were depicted as violent and savage. In numerous movies, it made a big impression on me. The contradiction between what we were taught by Hollywood versus what I discovered when I met face-to-face these people made me think about stereotyping for the first time in my life. And that shock was amplified when I started to watch in America Hollywood movies and the news depicting Arabs and my people, Palestinians. I was shocked by portrayals of Arabs and my people being projected on the screen as evil, as dangerous, as violent, uncivilized, bloodthirsty, and almost like subhumans. I thought to myself, had I not been a Palestinian myself, I would have hated Palestinians. Confronting these images was a driving force for me. I was overwhelmed. The cultural and political shock that I underwent from the very first weeks I spent in America forced me to take action. I started to feel that there was another call to service stronger than my desire to become an engineer. Obviously, my family did not like that. From interacting with my new American friends and the environment on campus in the Twin Cities, I realized that my faith, Islam, that is so important to me, it inspires me to be a decent, clean, honest, and productive man, was not known. My religious faith was misunderstood. Not that it was underrepresented, it was not represented, period. And the problem was, no one was doing anything about it. I felt there was a call for someone to step up and do something. I looked around. No one was doing anything except complaining about it. Motivated because of the openness I observed in the people around me and how quickly we can make friends here, I saw that American people are open-minded, they are friendly. I saw much diversity in America, but I realized I was not qualified. I was not qualified to do this. English is my second language. I have an accent, and I have limitations. How can I affect the public perception about Islam? But I had a strong desire to change the status quo. So I decided that even I was not qualified, I would learn how to speak, how to organize, and how to make a difference. So we found ourselves here today. What I felt when these realizations came to me, I know now that 3 things can be said, and that translates my experience. Number 1, be a voice to the voiceless. Step outside your comfort zone. Educate with empathy. These are the ideas that animated my work for the past 3 decades. Eventually, with a couple of friends, we decided to start in Washington, D.C., an organization that would deal with destructive stereotypes, not by pointing fingers, but by explaining who we are. We established the organization with the mission and vision to enhance the understanding of Islam, encourage dialogue, protect civil liberties, empower American Muslims, and build coalitions that promote justice and mutual understanding. This organization that I helped found, Council on American-Islamic Relations, CAIR, became a leading voice for American Muslims. In the 23 years that CAIR has been in existence, we have worked on so many social issues, notably employment discrimination, harassment and hate crimes, religious accommodation issues, among many other important issues. But at this historical moment, ladies and gentlemen, a cluster of major issues for our Muslim religious minority have profound ramification for America as a whole. This is a dangerous time. For a decade now, American Muslims have felt increasingly targeted and isolated in their own country because of ever louder and more frequent rhetorical attacks on them in the public sphere. Because of the increasing sense of urgency among Muslims targeted by this Islamophobic discourse, we and other institutions began to commission research in how this inflammatory discourse was being fueled. What we uncovered, without any exaggeration, a well-funded, a well-orchestrated propaganda campaign against Muslims, their leaders, and institutions, channeled through a handful of foundations and funders. Our research demonstrates that the fear-inducing propaganda is not random or an organic product of people in American society. It is a political campaign designed to do all it can to silence American Muslims, to disempower and isolate them, to deprive them of their place in American society. This year, in 2017, we at CAIR have been at the forefront of challenging legally in federal court and otherwise what is known as the watch list. Muslims know that list. Why are we fighting the watch list? Because it is a de facto Muslim registry. It has been used to target Muslims throughout the country. CAIR has launched a series of back-to-back lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of the watch list. The goal of these lawsuits is a complete overhaul. As a de facto Muslim registry, the watch list has been used to cause immigration delays, separating families indefinitely. It has been used to close thousands of bank accounts of Muslim businesses, individuals, families, Islamic centers for no good reason, to block people from making wire transfer at Western Union, to prevent people from certain employment, to revoke their hazmat licenses and or aviation licenses, to prevent people from test driving and purchasing vehicles, among other things. To stand up to the powerful, I know it is courageous, but it is risky. But we at CAIR needed to do that. The good news is, just recently, and for the first time, a federal judge has allowed the broadest constitutional challenge to the watch list brought by our attorneys to move forward, which means CAIR attorneys now have subpoena power to gain access to government documents and dispositions of government officials responsible for making and implementing the watch list. Now we can see how the policy is made, on what basis, and put forth a legal challenge. Finally, the Muslim ban. We have seen in the past 2 years Trump whipping up public opinion against immigrants of all minorities. Donald Trump has emboldened extremists and White House supremacists, Nazi organizations, extremists throughout his campaign into his administration. The Muslim ban, a logical extension of Trump's political program, attempts to completely ban immigration by members of one religious group, hence threatening the very foundation of American society and governance. Ladies and gentlemen, the use of religion to divide people in America is completely unacceptable. It is very important to separate the use of religion and from state, especially at this time. What Muslim Americans are going through might be new to some Muslims, but it is not new to America. This religious community is not the first community to suffer stigmatization, marginalization, discrimination, and underrepresentation. Every other minority has gone through this and worse, and continues to go through it. And if we do not connect, empathize, and sympathize with each other, and understand each other's struggle, not only we will be unable to help ourselves, we will be unable to help future generations of Americans. We are right now revisiting the darkest chapters of American history. The issues confronted today are racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, seeing minorities, immigrants, and refugees as a threat, trying to push back the clock on LGBTQI rights. America is a turning point. Its highest ideals are being tested. Its system of governance is being tested. And we cannot be indifferent to other people's struggle. We must not let the Muslim community fight its fight alone. We must not let African Americans fight their fight alone. We must not let anyone else fight their fight alone. Things do not change by themselves. We need an agent of change. I, some time ago, decided to be an agent of change. I am making this call to service to all of you. We need all of you to be in the front line. Historically, minorities that suffered and continue to suffer today have fought their battles largely by themselves. That is wrong. The good news is, today we are witnessing a new dynamic in society, that Americans are pulling together. Americans of diverse background and convictions and faith traditions are coming together, standing up for each other, supporting one another against injustices in a way that is historic. Let me remind you of some examples in the recent months. Armed bikers surrounding a mosque in Arizona. They were outnumbered by their neighbors who came to oppose the message of hate. Muslims helping to rebuild defaced and desecrated Jewish cemeteries. Jewish Americans launching network against Islamophobia and racism, Jewish Voice for Peace. Americans of all backgrounds rushing to airports when the Muslim ban was announced, including lawyers who usually charge $600 an hour, and many other examples. What these Americans who stood up for each other are saying is, when we witness an injustice, it is a call to action for all of us. It doesn't matter where we came from. What matters is where we are going and what path we are following to our destination. Ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago, when I came to America, I never thought I would become an advocate for social justice. I came here to further my education, to become an engineer, and probably to go home and to help my family in their business. Little did I know that I would take up the duty to advocate for civil rights. Disappoint my family, who were looking forward to my return to help them in their economic struggles. Let me close by urging you to be a voice for the voiceless, step outside your comfort zone, educate with empathy. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm so honored. God bless you.
These guys are going to start us with a question and answer.
Sure. take this out of your way.
Please join me in thanking Mr. Awad for his inspirational speech. Good evening. My name is Danielle Goatley, and I'm the new PBHA president.
My name is Amanda Moise. I am one of the student officers at PBHA. I'm the alumni history coordinator.
Mr. Awad has kindly agreed to answer a few questions before we close. So if you have questions, the ushers have note cards available, and we welcome you to write your questions down and pass them to the ushers at the aisle.
While people are writing down any questions that they may have, I'd like to take a second to thank the people who logistically made this event possible, including the Science Center for granting us this space, the Harvard University Police Department, and all of the people who put time and effort into making this event possible. I would also like to highlight the rest of Alumni Weekend and the Call of Service Week that is outlined in your program. Tomorrow will be a special alumni dinner where we will be honoring David Dance, Robert Bridgman, for their decades and decades of service to PBHA. So please, if you can, attend. It'll be a good time. And so if we have questions to be asked, I'll turn it over to Connie, Vice President of PBHA.
Thanks for the introduction, Amanda, and thank you, Mr. Awad, for joining us tonight. To start off, we have a question about CAIR, your work with CAIR. How has the mission and your vision of CAIR's work changed since its founding, and how has it evolved since you started the organization?
The mission and vision of the organization has stayed the same, but the work has intensified over the years, especially after 9/11 and after the war on Afghanistan and war in Iraq. We started to receive a lot of reports, complaints about hate crimes, discrimination. So we devoted a lot of resources into the civil rights work. And obviously in the past 2 years, as you can imagine, we have been quite busy at CAIR nationwide. But the good news is we have discovered so many allies in our communities. And these are not just fresh allies. We have increased our work with many civil rights organizations and minorities across the board. And that's why I said it is a historic moment, not only for my organization, but for the country to continue to work together and step outside the comfort zone and work with each other. So we're putting a lot of emphasis, to answer the question today, on coalition buildings and defending the rights of all Americans, not only American Muslims.
On that note of coalition building, could you speak more about how you and we all can ensure that anti-Semitism is addressed along with Islamophobia in these dark times?
This is a golden opportunity for the Jewish community organizations and Muslim community organizations to support one another. It is one thing to defend a mosque by Muslim when a mosque is desecrated. It is another when a Jewish rabbi comes to the mosque and defend the mosque. It is one thing to see only the Jewish community defending its community when there's anti-Semitism. It is another when you see an imam and the Muslim community rushing to the help of the Jewish community. So anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are both evil, And we cannot fight one without fighting the other. As simple as that.
And again, on that note of solidarity, what do you think is the greatest struggle facing Arab, Muslim, and Black unity today?
Racism. I mean, we, as I said, both are minorities. African Americans have suffered the most in this country and continue to suffer. And if we do not learn from their experience and be with them and understand, sympathize, and empathize, and be in their shoes, we don't expect them to be with us. And this is not just, exchange of support. As a Muslim, it is my obligation to stand up for people who are adversely affected by injustice. It is not a matter of convenience, it's a matter of faith. And of course, there are many African Americans who are Muslim. So if you're African American and you're Muslim, it's like double jeopardy. You suffer because you're Muslim, and you suffer because you're African American. So stereotypes are really dangerous. And Hollywood, I believe, before I came to the US, I was impacted by Hollywood movies, how they depicted minorities in America. So don't underestimate the popular culture on how they mold and shape our views of others. So interacting with each other as communities, building coalitions, standing up shoulder to shoulder is the way to move forward and cleanse this country from its racism.
That's actually a perfect segue into this next question. One of the audience members shared that what you said about cultural representation really resonated tonight. How have you seen Muslim representation change in the last 20 years, if at all?
It's a work in progress. It's, I'm so inspired that despite what we have seen in the past couple of years, and this is really inspiring. Instead of Muslims hiding and running away, you see young Muslims running for public office. Everywhere. Including here. And that is the message. That we don't run away, we run for public office. They scare us, but we move forward. And we're not alone in this. So yes, the Muslim community has been severely underrepresented in the popular culture, in media, in politics, but now there are thousands of Muslims who are studying journalism, communications, filmmaking, law, political science, and they're planning to be leaders in their societies. So we have a saying in Arabic, it's actually a verse in the Quran, so I'm not going to preach, so don't worry. It says, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. With difficulty, indeed, there is ease. Not after difficulty, with difficulty, there is ease. And with this challenge, the Muslim community is emerging as a vital component of this society. So I'm very inspired by young Muslims who are taking the positive side of this challenge.
Another audience member would like to know how you keep from being completely discouraged and beaten down by the opposition.
My wife is laughing. She knows that God blessed me of being determined. And the time I spent in the refugee camp made me a stronger, patient person. And I will not allow my circumstances dictate my values. And I will not allow the opposition, the smear campaigns, dictate my behavior. As simple as that.
On the note of your origin, what does your advocacy for Palestine look like presently, and how would you suggest someone getting involved from the States?
I have been focusing mainly on helping American Muslims and helping our communities at large to bridge the gap about Muslims and Islam. I never hide that I am a Palestinian, but I also admit I'm not a Palestinian activist. I'm an activist who happens to be a Palestinian. So while I wish I could give more time to issues of justice in Palestine, I don't see that there's any contradiction between what I do at CAIR. But that work needs serious development. I'm happy to see that there are many emerging forces in our societies advocating for justice in Palestine, not only within the Muslim community, but beyond. And I would love to help in any form, in any way I can. But my focus is CAIR. If we advocate for justice here for all, Palestinians will be included.
So you've talked a little bit about facing the opposition, and now this audience member would like to know how you recommend trying to engage those who have deeply rooted anti-Muslim views in your own community, not just strangers, but also friends and neighbors.
I think we have to reach out to people. Let me give you another example of the Quran. Again, I'm not preaching. In the Quran it says, an evil deed is not equivalent to a good deed. Repel that which is evil with that which is good. Your enemy might become a close friend, which means we have to take the initiative in reaching out to people. I would love to come and speak to the opposition. I would love to have a conversation. I would like to establish a trust. I don't want to play a gotcha game. You said this, I said that. Let's have a serious talk and sit down. Let's break bread and have lunch and discuss things. And finally, on the issue of racism in America, I know that our country and our society is so sophisticated. We are at Harvard campus. I'm struggling, again, excuse me, I'm struggling with the fact that we as a society could not convince those who discriminate against others, and there are many, white supremacists, neo-Nazis. I would like a genius among ourselves to convince these people that your skin color, your national origin, your height is not an achievement. It is not something you should take credit for, and you should not be judged by. It is, as Martin Luther King, the content of your character that should be judged. How can we convince people that they should not judge the biology of other people, they should judge the behavior of other people? I mean, really in backward societies, you may think that it takes a long time and many generations to understand this. But in the 21st century in America, to see some people putting someone in the White House on those bases is beyond me. So next time, vote.
With that hefty call to action, please join me in thanking Mr. Awad again for sharing his wisdom with us tonight. Thank you all for joining us tonight and for your thoughtful participation. Let's continue this dialogue beyond this room and beyond tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.